All right, Your God Bleeds by Jay Wilburn. The townsfolk drew in closer as the three missionaries maneuvered toward the dilapidated church. I need to be more specific about the town here in just a moment. They passed a sign that declared this cluster of buildings to be second skin. Many of the shuttered businesses bore that name as well. Okay. Let me make a new paragraph there, and then we'll keep rolling. Reverend Augustus Crest led the way, as if the folk weren't holding weapons and burning holes into the intruders with their eyes. Pastor Elmer Timms whispered from Augustus's left, "Gus." When nothing else came forth from the man's trembling lips, Augustus said, "Hold strong, brother." Gus had no illusions that Elmer had the sort of iron in his soul nor spirit in his heart for this sort of real danger in the service of the Lord. No, Pastor Elmer was more of a Sunday and Wednesday preacher in a church with air conditioning and PowerPoint song lyrics. He didn't like serving in the mission field, and he sure didn't like the sort of pressure the apostles felt in the early days of the church. Let's say second skin was more akin to those ancient pagan locations and Christianized than the usual Christianized small towns across rural America. Gus bet it would be difficult. Gus bet it would be difficult to find a map that showed second skin. There were likely lots of contour. Okay. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can start spelling some things right just for fun. Okay. There were likely lots of contour lines marking these mountains, but cartographers may not have known of this little town's existence. Okay, I think I may have added too much on that paragraph, but I'm going to leave it for now. "But I thrive upon it," Gus said, finishing the thought out loud. Sister Dorothy Hemp whispered amen from his right. Elmer muttered, "I think we got to survive in order to thrive." Gus rolled his eyes, not in the mood to be martyred today. "Then how about you don't shake and squawk so much, like a scared chicken waiting to be beheaded and plucked?" "Do chickens squawk?" Dorothy asked. Gus actually laughed aloud as a fellow with a hand axe, I believe that's one word, no, two words. A guy with a hand axe brandished it in front of them. He started to raise the dull head of the thing and showed gaps between his discolored teeth. The good old boy was white and dirty. Everyone in town was. Mountains and forests rolled away in all directions. Animals howled, barked, and chirped at one another through the surrounding wilderness. Gus used 2 fingers to push the weapon aside. The fellow looked too shocked at the missionary's audacity to put up a fight. Gus used his other hand to shuffle the fellow a few steps sideways as the three evangelists passed onward. Many of the buildings they passed were boarded over and looked to be crumbling out from behind that hammered wood. Houses that sat back from the central roadway did not appear to be aligned on any side streets themselves. The scrap wood and scrap metal structures, with old plastic for windows, looked to be built any place folks found a clear spot between trees. Trails of dirt, mud, and gravel weaved in and around all these crumbling places before vanishing over a hill or down into an overgrown gully. If Gus had to bet... Now let's do it this way. If Gus were a betting man, which he wasn't, but if he was, he would have bet that a few of those trails led to active stills that created white liquid that shined silver in the moonlight. Okay, so we got that there. Adding a little character to the town. Go back home, Thumper, someone yelled. Another toned in with growls of agreement. A skinny boy... Let's say others. Others toned in with growls of agreement. A skinny boy with one eye and a diseased socket that wasn't covered with any patch leaned out and spit at their feet. Elmer shuffled a bit, even though the kid's aim was off. No depth perception, Gus thought. Elmer's cowardly shuffle brought laughs and added boldness to the mob. Got a missing word there. To the mob that was working itself up into a lather. All right. Get your spine straight, Elmer, or I'll push you into their arms, Gus said low. Dorothy whispered what Gus guessed was a prayer under her breath. He had nothing against prayer, of course, but he liked the idea of projecting the confidence that God was already with them. Let's say, without being asked nor begged. We don't need none of your preaching, boy. More roaring agreement. I'll send you to meet Jesus, another guy with a thready high voice threatened. Laughter, louder and meaner. Laughter. Gus spoke with forced calm. Just keep moving. Keep on. Your Jesus bled to death. Man who sounded like he had drunk plenty of that silvery liquid today, said, I think you will bleed too if we stick you. They might need to borrow some pads for all that bleeding they're going to do. Hold on. They might need to borrow some, let's say, of my pads for all that bleeding they're going to do. An older woman cackled. Gus estimated she herself was a few years past bleeding. All right. I don't know if those details are gross, but we want to create some sense of danger here. One man stripped to the waist. One man, well, I don't want to say he was stripping to the waist. One man who was stripped to the waist reached out for Dorothy's behind. Gus pulled her forward and swatted the man's greasy hand away. The man cursed Gus and balled his fists. "No way to treat a lady," Gus said. "I'll treat you like a lady." The man's eyes were milky. Gus wondered how much the fellow could really see. Out of the ribs under his right arm, the strange fellow had a third arm. This one was still baby small, boneless, and shriveled, but it was clearly the makings of an extra arm. Gus wasn't sure that sort of thing could be explained by inbreeding alone. Maybe some sort of curse had fallen on the isolated town. No place was better for a curse than this one. Gus thought of a few witty comebacks, but he decided none of them made his situation better. None of them honored God for sure. A woman with a receding hairline, large hips, and stringy hair stood in their path. Stood in their path, wearing a sack of a dress. "What ails you, sister?" Gus called out. There was a bit of laughter, but confused whispers and a thick quiet spread through the crowd. It was more an awkward silence in a conversation than it was anyone actually calming down. Even the balding woman lost some of her confident gravity. She spoke with the wavering tones that reminded Gus a bit of Elmer, who was now visibly shaking next to him. I've already said Gus. Next to him. I don't. Speak up, woman, Gus ordered. The crowd backed off a step. Now, if Elmer could manage to hold his water, they might get out of this alive. "What ails you?" I asked. "I got arthritis, but I'll be doing better than you soon." The crowd grumbled approval. Gus said, You will if you believe. Now, do you want to be well, lady?" What? Do you want to be healed? You stepped in my path because the Lord willed it, whether you respect your Creator or not. So now is your choice. If my God can heal you, well, let's get gritty here. If my bleeding God can heal you, do you want me to ask him to do so? Make a choice, woman. I'm not here to stand around. I'm about God's business. Say she started again as everyone waited for her to finish. "I want to be healed." So Gus stepped forward and the crowd shuffled away, but stayed close enough to watch. A few men jostled others to get to where they could see. Gus's hands started to glow. All right, let me put a comma there to divide two complete causes. And no, that doesn't need a comma. And I keep fixing and unfixing things. And a few dirty old boys and gals fell to their knees. Maybe they weren't yet worshiping, but they were fearing a higher power one way or the other. Never underestimate a light show, Gus thought. "Don't touch me, please," the woman said. "You already decided, sister." Gus struck her on the forehead. There was a flash of light and a gasp traveled through the townsfolk. His hands were swallowed in the flash on impact, so no one saw for sure, but it sounded like he hit that woman with a closed fist. I must have been in a hurry. I left out a lot of articles there. She stumbled backward and bounced the back of her head on the ground when she fell. She was out. "You killed her. You're the devil." "If you believe in the devil," Gus challenged, "then you must believe in God." "I ain't never seen God," one man countered, "but I believe I've seen the devil today." Gus spread his hands and the crowd recoiled. "Either way, you should show holy fear before me." Pipes, clubs, and blades lifted around them. Elmer started to outright weep. He wasn't much good under pressure like this, nor really any other time as far as Gus was concerned. Pastor Elmer dropped to his knees and held out his palms in a defensive posture. The remaining teeth of the mob showed as they leered at the pastor's terror. Ye of little faith. Let's say Gus growled from between his complete set of gritted teeth. All right. Ye of little faith. Elmer drew in breath to start begging, but Gus had no intention of letting him finish. Gus seized the coward's chin and the back of his head. He twisted in 2 different directions, and Elmer finally shut up because his neck snapped like kindling. The dead pastor first went stiff, then slumped boneless to his side. The mob pulled up short. The old lady Gus had put on the ground started to twitch, but she wasn't going to come around fast enough to make his case. Let's say to make his point. Gus's hands started to glow once more. He took Elmer by his broken neck with both hands and hoisted him upward. Hoisted him bodily upward. Bones ground and scraped against one another. The crowd hissed in revulsion. "Come forth," Gus whispered. That light over his hands vanished with another flash, and all the bones in Elmer's neck crackled. Gus let go, and Elmer staggered from side to side with his eyes still closed. A few people in the mob dropped their weapons and reached out to catch Elmer if he were to fall. The resurrected pastor's eyes fluttered open. Need a comma there. And he turned his head from side to side. A few more crackles made the townsfolk hiss again. Bruising already spread in a ring around Elmer's throat. Let's say that would last a few days, just like the times before. He finally focused again and asked what happened. No, let's say more specific. Elmer finally focused again and asked what happened. "A miracle," Gus said. "Nothing you need to worry about or remember for now." Everyone dropped their weapons and bowed. It wasn't exactly Christian to let them keep doing that, but it beat having them try to kill them, Gus figured. The first lady healed in this strange little town of Second Skin. Alright, I don't need this disclaimer here because I already put that information earlier in the story, so let me do that again. The first lady healed in the strange little town of Second Skin finally stood. She bent her fingers, then her knees, which were silent. "I'm healed," she cried. Everyone rushed forward, but not to attack. Gus felt pressed, and he got pulled in uncomfortable ways, but when he lit up his hands, they gave him a little space. Not a lot, but a little. Then the real show began. He healed bad eyes, bad teeth, weeping boils, ruined feet, babies struggling to breathe, and old cusses with rattling coughs. He laid hands on their thin skin over swelling tumors. They did not vanish immediately, but the suffering believed they felt the difference right away. When it came to extra arms, Gus didn't press his luck. When it came to extra arms and other such deformities, Gus didn't press his luck. All right, there we go. "Come to church," Gus ordered. "Come to the church and hear the message." They followed him up the hill. They followed him and his companions. They followed him and his companions up the hill toward the sanctuary like many new believers in centuries past. Gus spread his hands as he entered the dark building. His fingers pulled through spider webs, but the creatures who made them shied away from his touch. Pews were overturned, but his followers set them right and took their seats. With the broken pews, many sat on the dusty floor and lined the dark walls all around. There was no cross in here, but that was fine. It smelled like something had died recently. That was not so fine, but Gus had a job to do. He turned to face them all. Dorothy sat on the steps of the altar near him. Elmer stayed near the doors in the back, still rubbing his neck and looking around in fear. He was a weasel of a man, but he served his purpose when a big gesture was needed. Gus waved the cobwebby fingers on both hands as he said, "From now on, this is a holy place covered in the blood of your God, the blood he bled for all of you. From now on, Second Skin will be known as Salvation City." Let's see. And a great revival will spread out from this glorious place. Whether they understood or not, the townspeople gave up a cheer. The sermon was only getting started. All right, hold on. I want to add one more thing to kind of punctuate the title a little bit. Gus stilled his hands and closed his eyes. There is no God worth worshiping who isn't willing to spill a little blood for the privilege. All right, let me fix the spelling and then we'll add one more sentence here. Wounds opened in Gus's palms like sores. A thin line of blood drooled from each stigmata wound, each stigmata opening, and dripped onto the dusty floor. Teeth chattered. Groans echoed from the walls, and many wept. Old Dorothy's eyes rolled up into her head, and she shook with the ecstasy of it all. A power that filled the air like invisible electricity. All right, let me spell ecstasy correctly. The sermon was only getting started.